The church was silent, except for the soft murmurs of grieving voices and the occasional rustle of fabric as mourners shifted in their seats. Candles flickered along the stone walls, casting eerie shadows that danced in rhythm with the sorrow that hung thick in the air. The scent of incense mixed with fresh flowers, creating an overwhelming atmosphere of loss. At the front of the church, a dark wooden coffin rested upon a raised platform, adorned with white lilies and a single framed photograph. Inside lay Jonathan Hale, a respected businessman, a husband, and a father, gone too soon under circumstances that left more questions than answers. The priest, an older man with deep-set eyes and a solemn expression, cleared his throat as he prepared to deliver the final words. But before he could speak, a sharp, piercing bark shattered the silence. All heads turned toward the aisle, where a large, black German shepherd stood, ears pricked forward, body tense. The dog, known as Max, had belonged to Jonathan, his faithful companion for years. His presence at the funeral wasn't a surprise, but his behavior was. Max's growl was low, guttural, almost a warning. His eyes locked onto the coffin, his tail stiff as if he sensed something no one else did. "Max, no," whispered Claire Hale, Jonathan's widow, gripping the leash tighter. She had brought him along, believing he deserved to say goodbye. But now, embarrassment flushed her cheeks as guests exchanged awkward glances. The priest attempted to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, grief affects us all differently, even our beloved pets. Let us remember Jonathan with love, Anne." Max barked again, louder this time. His muscles tensed, and he lunged forward, straining against the leash as if trying to reach the coffin. A few mourners gasped. A man sitting near the front, Detective Samuel Carter, leaned forward, his instincts kicking in. He had attended out of respect. Jonathan had been a known figure in the city, and his sudden death, ruled as a heart attack, had left many shocked. But something about the dog's reaction fell off. "Why is he doing that?" an older woman whispered. Claire struggled to hold Max back. "I don't know, he's never acted like this before." The priest, who had remained composed, suddenly shifted uncomfortably. His fingers twitched as he adjusted his robe, eyes darting toward the coffin. Samuel caught that movement. Max growled again, his bark now a deep warning. His focus never wavered. He wasn't looking at the mourners, not even Claire. He was staring directly at the coffin, his nose twitching. Samuel stood. "Mrs. Hale," he said calmly, stepping forward. "Let him go." Claire hesitated. "What?" "Let him go," he repeated, softer this time. "I want to see what he does." A tense silence filled the room. Even the priest seemed to stiffen, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. Claire's hands trembled, but something in Samuel's expression told her to trust him. Slowly, she loosened her grip. Max didn't hesitate. He bolted forward, launching himself at the coffin, paws scraping against the wood, barking furiously. The entire church erupted in chaos. Gasps, murmurs, shouts of concern. People rose from their seats, some stepping back in shock. Claire's face went pale as she rushed forward to pull Max away. And then, a loud, dull thud echoed through the church. Everyone froze. Samuel's eyes locked onto the coffin. It had moved. Max's claws had dislodged something, not enough to open it completely, but enough that the lid had shifted just slightly. Just enough for Samuel to see something he wasn't supposed to see. A flicker of movement inside. Something, or someone, had moved. Samuel's blood ran cold. He turned sharply toward the priest, who now looked visibly nervous, sweat forming at his brow. The detective's voice was calm but firm. "Father," he said. "Why do you look so afraid?" The priest didn't answer. Max kept barking. And the coffin? It moved again. The air in the church turned suffocatingly thick, every eye locked on the coffin that had just moved. Max's barks were relentless, his paws clawing at the wood, his body tense with urgency. Something was inside. Something that shouldn't have been. Detective Samuel Carter took a step forward, his sharp eyes darting between the coffin and the visibly shaken priest. "Father," Samuel's voice was calm, but his words held weight. "Tell me why you look so nervous." The priest's hands trembled as he adjusted the sleeves of his robe. "This is a funeral, detective," he stammered. "We are here to mourn, not to." Thump. The sound made every hair on Samuel's body stand on end. Gasps echoed through the church. Someone, or something, had just knocked from inside the coffin. Claire Hale staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, this isn't possible." One of the mourners, a frail elderly woman, fainted on the spot. Samuel didn't wait. In one swift motion, he strode forward and gripped the coffin's lid. The funeral director rushed toward him in protest, but Samuel shot him a glare. "Step back." Max's growls deepened, his body practically vibrating with urgency. With a deep breath, Samuel pried open the coffin. What he saw made his stomach drop. Inside lay Jonathan Hale, or at least, what should have been his lifeless body. But instead of a peaceful corpse, Jonathan's eyes fluttered open. A blood-curdling scream tore through the church as several people scrambled backward. Claire collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Jonathan's lips moved, but the only sound that came out was a low, raspy wheeze. His chest barely lifted, as if he were clinging to the last threads of life. Samuel snapped into action, pressing 2 fingers against Jonathan's throat. His pulse was weak, but it was there. "He's alive!" Samuel shouted. "Someone call an ambulance! Now!" The funeral home staff stood frozen in horror, unable to comprehend what was happening. But Samuel wasn't watching them. His gaze snapped to the priest. The man's face was ashen, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. Max turned on him, a deep, threatening growl rumbling from his chest. The dog had been barking at the coffin not out of grief, but out of warning. The pieces clicked in Samuel's head. This wasn't an accident. Jonathan Hale had been buried alive. But the question that now hung thick in the air was why. Samuel grabbed the priest by the arm, yanking him away from the shocked crowd. "You knew," he hissed. "You knew he was alive, didn't you?" The priest's eyes darted around wildly, his breath coming in short gasps. I was just following orders." Samuel's grip tightened. "Whose orders?" The priest swallowed hard. His lips parted, but before he could answer, bang! A gunshot rang out. The stained glass window at the side of the church shattered, shards of colored glass raining down. The mourners screamed and ducked. Samuel instinctively shielded Claire, his free hand reaching for his gun. But the shooter was already gone, a black-clad figure bolting from the church entrance. Max took off after them. "No!" Claire screamed, but Max was already outside, chasing the unknown attacker into the stormy night. Samuel's mind raced. Someone had just tried to silence the priest. Which meant whoever wanted Jonathan dead knew they had failed. And they wouldn't stop until they finished the job. The wind howled outside as Max tore through the church doors, his powerful legs propelling him forward with a deadly determination. Rain pelted the pavement, and the night was thick with shadows, but Max's instincts were sharper than any storm. His target, the figure in black, was sprinting down the slick cobblestone street, weaving between parked cars and disappearing into an alleyway. Max didn't hesitate. Inside the church, chaos still reigned. Claire was on the floor, sobbing in disbelief. Mourners whispered in frantic voices. The priest clutched his chest, looking as if his soul had already left his body. But Samuel Carter? He was already moving. Gun still drawn, the detective vaulted over a pew and charged toward the exit. "Stay with Jonathan," he barked at Claire before disappearing into the storm after Max. The streets were empty except for the dim glow of flickering streetlights. Samuel's boots splashed through puddles as he turned the corner and spotted Max at the end of the alleyway, snarling at the darkness ahead. Samuel raised his weapon. "Max! What do you see?" Max didn't take his eyes off the alley's end. His ears were rigid, his tail stiff, his stance that of a soldier ready for battle. Samuel slowed his pace, his instincts screaming that someone was still here. He took a cautious step forward. Then suddenly, a trash can toppled over. Samuel barely had time to react before a figure lunged from the shadows. A gloved hand swiped at him with a knife. Samuel dodged, barely. The blade missed his throat by an inch, slicing through his jacket. Max leaped, his teeth sinking into the attacker's forearm. The masked figure screamed and stumbled back, trying to shake Max off, but the dog refused to release his grip. Samuel seized his chance. Bang! A single warning shot fired into the air. "Drop the knife," Samuel ordered. For a moment, it seemed like the attacker would comply. They stumbled back, holding their injured arm, their chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Then, they made a choice. With a sudden burst of energy, the attacker kicked Max away and ran. Max yelped as he hit the ground but was back on his feet in seconds, already prepared to chase. Samuel had a clean shot, but something told him not to take it. Instead, he sprinted after the suspect, turning into the next alley. Only to find it empty. No sign of footsteps. No sign of movement. It was as if the figure had simply vanished. Samuel cursed under his breath, holstering his gun. He turned back to Max, who was sniffing the ground frantically, his nose twitching. "What is it, buddy?" Samuel crouched, running a hand over Max's back. The dog was still bristling with adrenaline, but his whimpers told Samuel something wasn't right. That's when he saw it. A slip of paper, damp from the rain, crumpled near a storm drain. Samuel picked it up, carefully unfolding the soggy sheet. The ink had bled slightly, but the words were still clear. "Stay out of this. He was meant to die." Samuel's jaw clenched. Whoever had planned Jonathan's death was still out there. And now, they knew someone had ruined their plan. As thunder rolled overhead, Samuel locked eyes with Max. "Looks like we just made ourselves a new enemy." Max let out a low, rumbling growl. The rain showed no mercy as it poured down in sheets, soaking Samuel's jacket and turning the cobblestone streets into treacherous, glistening pathways. He clenched the note in his fist, its ink bleeding away with every drop of rain, but the message had already burned itself into his mind. Stay out of this. He was meant to die. Samuel had seen threats before, but something about this one felt different. This wasn't just a cover-up. This was personal. Max stood rigid beside him, ears twitching, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air for any lingering traces of their attacker. But whoever it was, they were gone. Samuel exhaled sharply, shoving the note into his pocket. Come on, Max. We need to get back. They turned toward the church, their soaked clothes clinging to them as they hurried inside. The moment they entered, Samuel was met with a chorus of panicked voices. Claire Hale had moved closer to the coffin, clutching Jonathan's hand as if afraid to let go. The doctor, who had arrived moments earlier, was kneeling beside the casket, checking Jonathan's vitals. The priest, however, was visibly shaking. He stood by the altar, his lips moving in silent prayer, his eyes darting toward Samuel with barely contained fear. Samuel approached him slowly. "Start talking, Father." The priest swallowed hard. I don't know anything." Max let out a low, menacing growl. Samuel didn't blink. "Lying won't save you. Jonathan was buried alive, and you officiated the funeral. Either you knew about it, or you're involved. Which one is it?" The priest visibly paled, gripping the edge of the altar. "I had no choice." His voice was barely above a whisper. "They came to me, days ago. They told me Jonathan was dead, but no one was to inspect the body. The casket was to be sealed before the ceremony. I was paid to ensure it happened without question." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Who paid you?" The priest hesitated. "I don't know their names. Just that they were connected. Powerful." "Powerful?" Samuel echoed. "Powerful how?" The priest's gaze flickered toward Jonathan, who was still unconscious but clinging to life. "I think Jonathan knew something. Something dangerous. And whoever wanted him dead." He exhaled shakily. "They wanted him silenced, permanently." Samuel was about to press further when the doctor stood up, his face grim. "He needs a hospital," the doctor announced. "Immediately. He's weak, dehydrated, but he's alive. If we act fast, we might save him." Samuel didn't hesitate. "I'll drive." Claire looked up at him, her eyes pleading. "I'm coming too." Samuel nodded. "Fine. But stay close. Whoever did this might come back to finish the job." The doctor and Claire carefully lifted Jonathan from the casket, draping a warm coat over his frail body. They hurried toward the exit, where Samuel's car was parked. Max followed close behind, his eyes constantly scanning the shadows. As Samuel helped load Jonathan into the car, he felt a strange prickling sensation on the back of his neck. A feeling he'd learned to trust over years in law enforcement. Someone was watching them. His eyes darted toward the rooftops across the street. For a split second, he swore he saw a silhouette standing against the stormy sky. But when he blinked, it was gone. A ghost in the rain. Samuel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The rain had eased into a slow drizzle by the time Samuel's car tore through the darkened streets, his headlights slicing through the mist. Jonathan lay unconscious in the back seat, his breath shallow, his skin ice-cold. Claire sat beside him, gripping his hand, whispering soft reassurances. Max, ever vigilant, sat on the passenger seat, his ears twitching at every sound beyond the car's windows. His nose was wet and cold, his posture tense. Samuel stole a glance at the rearview mirror. He hadn't forgotten the shadowy figure on the rooftop, the one that had vanished the moment he'd locked eyes with them. Someone was watching. Someone who wasn't done yet. "Hold on, Jonathan," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. "Just a little longer." Samuel pressed the accelerator. The hospital wasn't far. But fate had other plans. Crack! A shot rang out. Samuel's instincts took over. His foot slammed the brakes, sending the car skidding sideways just as a bullet shattered the back window. Claire screamed. Max barked furiously. Samuel cursed under his breath, yanking the wheel to keep them from veering off the road. He barely managed to keep control before the car lurched to a halt. The street was empty. No cars. No movement. Just the eerie glow of a nearby street lamp flickering in the misty darkness. But Samuel knew better. They were here. "Claire, get down," he ordered. She didn't hesitate, covering Jonathan's body with her own as another gunshot pierced the air. This one missed, hitting the pavement inches from the car. Samuel reached for his gun. "Max, go!" The dog lunged out of the car, disappearing into the shadows. Silence. Samuel's heart pounded as he gripped his pistol, scanning the darkness. Then a sharp yelp. Samuel's stomach twisted. Max had found someone. Or worse, someone had found Max. Leaving Claire and Jonathan in the car, Samuel moved quickly, pressing himself against the side of a nearby building for cover. His pulse was steady, his breath controlled. He'd been in worse situations. But there was something about this one that sent a deep chill down his spine. He turned the corner. And stopped dead. A man in a dark trench coat stood at the edge of the alley, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping a pistol equipped with a suppressor. And at his feet, Max lay still. Samuel's blood boiled. "You should have stayed out of this, detective," the man said, his voice cold as steel. "But now, it's too late." Samuel's finger tightened on the trigger. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The man smirked. "No, Carter. You did." And then, he stepped aside, revealing a second figure. The last person Samuel ever expected to see. Claire gasped from behind him. Because standing there, bruised but very much alive, was Jonathan. The world seemed to tilt as Samuel locked eyes with Jonathan. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing. Jonathan was supposed to be unconscious, dying. Yet here he was, standing with the enemy, his face bruised, his expression unreadable. "Jonathan?" Claire's voice was barely a whisper, filled with shock and betrayal. Jonathan's lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but the man in the trench coat cut in first. "This isn't the reunion you expected, is it, detective?" The man's smirk widened as he pressed the suppressor of his gun against Jonathan's back. Samuel's grip on his own gun tightened. "You have 3 seconds to explain before I put you down." The man chuckled. Now. No need for threats. You've been chasing ghosts in the dark, Carter. Let me shine some light." With his free hand, he reached into his coat, slowly pulling out a small envelope. He tossed it toward Samuel's feet. "Go ahead. Open it." Samuel hesitated, then quickly bent down, keeping his gun trained on the man as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a photograph. The moment he saw it, his stomach dropped. It was a picture of Jonathan. But not from the funeral, or even recently. It was from months ago. He was standing in front of an unmarked building, shaking hands with a man Samuel recognized immediately. Victor Langley. The name sent a chill down his spine. Victor Langley was a ghost, a man who operated in the shadows, pulling the strings behind high-profile disappearances, rigged investigations, and untimely deaths. And Jonathan, the man they just pulled out of a coffin, was shaking hands with him like an old friend. Claire's breath hitched. "Jonathan, what is this?" Jonathan closed his eyes. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, really?" The trench-coated man laughed. "Because to me, it looks exactly like what it is. Your dear Jonathan here has been working for Langley for years. Feeding him information. Making people disappear. And when he finally became a liability, well." The man nudged Jonathan with the gun. "You know what they do to liabilities." Samuel's mind raced. If Jonathan had been working for Langley, then his burial wasn't just an attempted murder, it was a message. Langley had staged it as a final warning to anyone who crossed him. And yet, Jonathan had survived. Someone had wanted him dead. Someone else had wanted him alive. Samuel's thoughts snapped back to the present. If Langley wanted him dead, why bury him alive? Why not just finish the job? The man's smirk didn't fade. Because Langley wanted it to be painful. Slow. He wanted Jonathan to feel every second of his betrayal. Jonathan clenched his fists. I didn't betray him, he spat. I was trying to get out. The man shrugged. Langley doesn't care about intent. Only results. Samuel's jaw tightened. And you? Who the hell are you? The man finally lowered his gun. Just a messenger. He tilted his head. You should be thanking me, Carter. I just saved your life. Before Samuel could react, the man whistled sharply. And Max sprang to life. The dog had been playing dead. In a blur of motion, Max lunged at the man, teeth sinking into his arm. He shouted in pain, trying to shake the dog off. Samuel moved instantly, slamming the man's wrist against the wall, knocking the gun loose. It clattered to the ground. Jonathan, seizing the moment, shoved the man backward. But the man wasn't alone. From the shadows, a second figure emerged, gun raised. Bang! A single shot echoed through the alley. Samuel froze. Claire gasped. And Jonathan collapsed. Blood spread across his shirt, blooming like a dark flower. His lips moved, but no words came out. Then, his body hit the pavement. The second gunman, face hidden in the dark, wasted no time. He turned and vanished into the night. Samuel rushed forward, catching Jonathan just before he hit the ground completely. His hands pressed against the gunshot wound. Jonathan's eyes fluttered. I tried. Tried what? Samuel demanded. Who was that? Jonathan coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. I was going to expose him. Langley. I had proof. His breath hitched. It's hidden. Samuel leaned in closer. Where? Jonathan's lips trembled. He forced the words out. In the coffin. Samuel's blood ran cold. The coffin. The very one they'd pulled him from. Jonathan's body went limp. Claire let out a choked sob. Max whimpered. And Samuel realized the awful truth. They had left behind the only evidence that could take Langley down. Back in the graveyard. Inside Jonathan's coffin. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Samuel pressed his fingers against Jonathan's throat. No pulse. His heart clenched, but he didn't have time to grieve. The enemy was still out there. Max stood over Jonathan's body, growling at the shadows. Claire was trembling, hands hovering over Jonathan's chest, as if she could will him back to life. Samuel grabbed her wrist. Claire. We need to move. Now. She stared at him, her face pale and tear-streaked. We can't just leave him here. I know, he said, voice tight. But if what he said is true, then the only way we stop this, the only way Jonathan didn't die for nothing, is by getting to that coffin before Langley's men do. Claire wiped her face, steeling herself. Then she nodded. Samuel turned to Max, find the shooter. Max snapped to attention, his ears twitching. Then, with a low growl, he took off into the darkness. Samuel bent down, closing Jonathan's eyes. I'll finish what you started, he murmured, then stood. We need to get back to the graveyard, he said. Fast. The drive back was a blur of headlights and wet pavement. Samuel pushed the car to its limit, tires screeching as they sped through the city streets. Claire clutched the dashboard. What if they already got to it? They wouldn't have killed Jonathan if they had, Samuel said. That shooter was their backup plan. If he talked, they'd take him out. But they wouldn't risk moving the evidence until they were sure. She swallowed. I hope you're right. As they neared the graveyard, Samuel cut the headlights and slowed. The place was eerily silent. No movement. No vehicles. Too quiet. Samuel parked a block away. We go in on foot. Claire nodded, pulling her jacket tighter around her. They moved quickly through the iron gates, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth. Max reappeared from the shadows, his body tense, his tail stiff. Samuel crouched beside him. You found something? Max let out a low, warning growl. Samuel followed his gaze and saw it. Fresh footprints. Leading straight to Jonathan's grave. His stomach twisted. We're not alone. Samuel and Claire rushed toward the grave, hearts pounding. But when they arrived, they stopped short. The coffin was gone. A gaping hole yawned in the earth where it had been buried. Dirt was scattered everywhere. Claire's breath came in sharp gasps. No, 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 no. Samuel clenched his jaw. He should have known Langley's men would act fast. But then a noise. A faint scraping sound. Max's ears perked. He turned his head toward the mausoleum at the far end of the graveyard. Samuel exchanged a look with Claire. They hadn't taken the coffin far. Stay close, he whispered, leading the way. The old stone mausoleum loomed ahead, its doors slightly ajar. Light flickered inside. Samuel peeked through the crack. 2 men. Dressed in black. Crowbars in hand. And between them, Jonathan's coffin. One man wiped sweat from his brow. Hurry it up. Langley wants this done before sunrise. The second man grunted as he pried the coffin lid open. What the hell is so important about? Crack. A gunshot rang out. The first man slumped forward, blood pooling beneath him. The second man froze, his face twisting in terror. Samuel and Claire ducked behind a tombstone as another shot echoed through the graveyard. Someone else was here. A third party. And they wanted whatever was in that coffin for themselves. The second man dropped his crowbar, bolting toward the exit. He barely made it 2 steps before another silenced shot took him down. Samuel's pulse thundered. Whoever the shooter was, they were close. Max let out a soft whimper, his tail tucked low. Claire whispered, "What do we do?" Samuel's mind raced. If they ran now, they'd never find out what was in that coffin. But if they stayed, they could be next. His fingers twitched over his holster. He was about to make a move when a voice came from inside the mausoleum. Calm. Chillingly familiar. Well, well. I was wondering when you'd show up, Carter. Samuel's blood ran ice cold. Because stepping into view, gun in hand, was Victor Langley himself. Samuel's breath slowed. His instincts sharpened. Victor Langley stood inside the mausoleum, the open coffin at his feet, a silenced pistol hanging loosely from his fingers. The 2 men who had tried to steal the coffin lay motionless beside it. Claire clutched Samuel's arm, her fingers ice cold. Langley smirked. You always were a step behind, Carter. Samuel's jaw tightened. You killed them. Langley shrugged. They were liabilities. Just like Jonathan. Claire sucked in a breath. You had Jonathan killed? Langley sighed. Technically, I gave the order. Can't have loose ends, you see. He gestured at the coffin. And Jonathan was about to become a very big loose end. Samuel's eyes flickered to the coffin. The lid was open just a crack. Something was inside. Max let out a low, guttural growl. He stood protectively in front of Claire, his hackles raised. Langley's expression darkened. You should have stayed away, Carter. But I'll admit, I do enjoy an audience for my victories. He stepped aside, revealing the contents of the coffin. And Samuel's blood turned to ice. Inside the coffin was not a body. It was a black metal box. Old. Rusted at the edges. It had a government insignia on the front, partially obscured by dirt. Claire whispered, "What is that?" Langley smiled. Proof. Samuel clenched his fists. Proof of what? Langley gave him a knowing look. The kind of proof that makes careers. That topples governments. That erases people from history. Samuel's stomach churned. What's inside? Langley chuckled. You think I'd tell you? Let's just say Jonathan got a little too curious and found out what happens when you dig where you shouldn't. Samuel's mind raced. Whatever was inside that box was worth more than Jonathan's life. More than the men Langley had killed tonight. Claire's voice was barely a whisper. You're not taking it. Langley's smirk widened. Oh, sweetheart. I already have. Samuel's hand inched toward his gun. Langley clicked his tongue. Tisk, TSK, Carter. You really think you're faster than me? His pistol rose. But before he could fire, Max lunged. A blur of fur and teeth collided with Langley. His gun fired, but the shot went wide as Max sank his teeth into Langley's arm. Langley screamed, stumbling backward. The pistol clattered to the ground. Samuel moved. He tackled Langley to the stone floor, pinning him down. Tell me what's in the box, Langley. Langley gritted his teeth. You're too late. You'll never stop this. Claire grabbed the gun. Her hands trembled, but her grip was firm. Samuel, we need to go. Max still had his teeth buried in Langley's sleeve, snarling. Samuel pressed his knee into Langley's chest. Where were you taking it? Langley chuckled, blood staining his teeth. You'll never make it out of here alive. A car engine roared in the distance. Samuel's stomach dropped. Reinforcements. We have to move, Claire urged. Samuel made a split-second decision. He grabbed the metal box, tucking it under his arm. Then he whistled for Max. Max released Langley with a reluctant snarl. Langley coughed, a cruel smile still on his lips. Run, Carter. Run while you still can. Samuel grabbed Claire's hand. They bolted. As they sprinted through the graveyard, headlights appeared at the entrance. Dark SUVs. Blacked-out windows. Claire gasped. They're blocking the way out. Samuel's mind raced. No time to think. No time to hesitate. He spotted a break in the fence. Their only chance. Over there, he shouted. They ran for it. Gunfire cracked the night. Bullets whizzed past them, hitting headstones. Max leaped through the gap first. Claire followed, scraping her arm on the metal, but she didn't slow down. Samuel dove through just as a bullet clipped his shoulder. Pain flared, but he kept moving. They reached the car. Samuel threw the box into the back seat. Max jumped in after it. Samuel hit the gas. The tires screeched against the wet pavement as they tore away from the graveyard. Miles outside the city, Samuel finally pulled over on an empty road. His shoulder ached, but he ignored it. Claire was shaking. "We have to know." Samuel nodded. With careful hands, he unlatched the rusted metal box. Inside, beneath layers of yellowed documents, was something that made Claire's breath hitch. A single photograph. It showed a young Victor Langley, standing beside powerful men in expensive suits. And at the center, a man everyone thought was dead. A man whose death had shaped history. Samuel's fingers trembled. "This can't be real." Claire swallowed. "If this gets out, it'll change everything." Max let out a soft whimper, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Samuel stared at the photo, the weight of its truth pressing on his chest. Jonathan had died for this. They had killed for this. And now, the world would finally know. The end.